Good.
I think there's something about being accessible.
Yeah.
So I think that's the other side of it. You don't want to go too far. To your point, you want to look good for the event. You want to convey the right message, but you also want the group to feel comfortable, not just recognizing that you cared and mattered to dress up. So right. I don't know. It's a balance.
I agree 100%. Well, I'm excited to be able to have this discussion and to share best practices with people who care and are interested.
Well, I'm honored to be included, especially, so early on in the process, and I enjoyed our pre-talk as well.
Me too. Me too.
All right, we're starting to have some folks trickle in. We'll give it till a minute or two after 9 before we start.
Okay, good. And Gayle, I'm going to start out calling you by your title and then switch to Gayle if that's okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
And should I do the same? Start off calling you ambassador, and then switch to Ted?
And then switch to Ted.
Perfect.
If you don't mind.
Not at all.
Dylan, will questions come in in the chat, or will people just ask them?
They'll come in the chat window.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Will they come in chat or Q&A? Because I see it looks like there's some other comments that have been made in the chat. They might just be for our group sometimes. I won't write anything embarrassing either way.
Yeah, so maybe Q&A.
You can select hosts and panelists. The audience can't select that grouping. So when the questions will come in, they'll come from audience members into the group chat there.
Okay.
All right, as folks are coming in, just want to remind everyone this event will be recorded. And if you have any questions at any time for our speakers, feel free to submit them through the chat window. We do have some time reserved at the end for Q&A, so we will go over some of those questions. And you're also welcome to submit them directly to me. Let's see. We'll be starting in just, we'll give it another minute just to let some people start logging in. All right. It's all right with you, Ted and Gayle. I'm happy to kick things off.
Ready to go.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dylan Keene, and I am the manager of our sustainability committee here at the US-ASEAN Business Council. I am genuinely delighted to welcome you all to the second installment of our Chief Sustainability Officer Fireside Chat Series with Dr. Gayle Schueller, Senior Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer at 3M. After kicking off this series last November with a really fantastic conversation with Laura Lane of UPS, head of the COP26 conference, we're excited to host another esteemed sustainability practitioner to discuss some of the innovative work she and her company 3M are doing in this space. and explore new areas of private-public collaboration this year and beyond, and also learn a bit more about her journey and how she got to where she is today. For some background on this conversation series, as the private sector continues to deepen its focus on sustainability issues and countries of Southeast Asia lean into these critical conversations, we felt it was important for the Council to be a convening organization to pull together some of the most seasoned leaders in the world to discuss how they view these issues, what they and their companies are doing to solve some of the challenges they're facing, and how the private sector and governments of Southeast Asia can work more closely to align to drive positive change. As I said, we're excited to hear a bit about the personal background of these chief sustainability officers, why they chose to focus their career on sustainability, and also where they believe the industry is headed in this regard. Today's conversation with Dr. Schueller really couldn't come at a better time following COP26 last year and leading into a year that is really focused on greater sustainability commitments and kind of following up on some of the commitments that have already been made. 3M has a really unique perspective on sustainability globally and in Southeast Asia in particular. And we are also pleased to have 3M as a co-chair of our sustainability committee as well. We have many more CSO chats lined up in the coming months, so we hope you will plan to join those conversations as well. Following today's conversation between our President and CEO, Ambassador Ted Osius, and Dr. Schueller, we will move to a Q&A portion at the end. Again, if you have any questions during the conversation, please submit them in the chat window so we can view them during the Q&A session. Also, please note that today's program is being recorded and also live streamed on LinkedIn, and a recording will be provided after the event is over. So thank you again for joining. And with that, I will turn the floor over to Ambassador Osius for some opening remarks. Ambassador,
thanks.
back to you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Dylan. And let me say hello to everyone who's joining us, whether you're joining us from the United States, from across ASEAN, or live on LinkedIn. It's truly a pleasure to be here today with Dr. Gayle Schueller, Senior Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer at 3M. Gayle started in 3M's corporate laboratory as a product development engineer, and she has over 29 years of technical and business leadership experience. Her career spans a broad range of businesses, from electronics to healthcare to consumer industries. She has led technical and business teams from around the world: Europe, Asia, Latin America, North America. And Dr. Schueller's previous assignments include Vice President of New Platforms for Growth and Commercialization, Director General for 3M Mexico, Vice President for Global Sustainability, and Vice President of Research and Development and Design for 3M's consumer and office business. As you'll hear today, Dr. Schueller brings a significant amount of technical expertise to her role at 3M and in the area of sustainability in particular. Dr. Schueller, or if you'll let me, I'll call you Gayle. I'm really honored to be with you today. I look forward to this discussion. But before I start asking questions, I wonder if you would share just a few initial thoughts.
Well, Ambassador Osius, I am honored as well. So thank you so much for you and your whole ASEAN team for including 3M and for the great partnership. And it's a pleasure to join you personally today. So I have a background in science. My father was a high school chemistry teacher. My mom taught special ed, so we had summers off and would spend a lot of time outdoors and exploring spaces. So I think that their background and influence is something that has really brought into me a passion for looking out for both people and the environment and how they intertwine together. So when I pursued my PhD in material science and came out and joined, 3M was a company I chose because of all the diversity of the businesses and the global nature that it offered, because I wanted to do science, but I also wanted to create an impact with that science, kind of that purpose beyond creating the breakthroughs. So So that's how I ended up at 3M. And I'm delighted that I've been able to have that type of history, starting with our corporate labs, working on technologies and really advancing those into products that can make a difference in people's lives. And then through the bio that you shared, being able to work with teams all around the world on things that are really important issues, getting to know different cultures, and candidly spending some really exciting and interesting time in the ASEAN region has been part of that experience. So I'm really feeling very fortunate and blessed to have had some great experiences to build on.
Thank you. Well, I'm hearing that this started with your parents. It started early in your life that you got interested in both science and in the environment, science and the outdoor, science and nature. I have kids and I see them just absorbing what they can about nature, learning about nature, and I feel that spark. So it's wonderful to hear that that's where it got started for you. And then how did you end up leading sustainability at 3M? Was it something that you intended to do, or did it fall in your lap, or how did you end up in this position?
Yeah, interesting question. I think when I was studying in college or graduate school, or even when I started my career, there weren't jobs like the ones I hold today. There wasn't. I didn't, other than maybe a broad definition of what sustainability was, I didn't really understand what that was. And there certainly wasn't a job title at 3M or many other companies that would be a chief sustainability officer. So I really started my career with looking for ways that I could make a difference through science. And I advanced on a scientific path. I had wonderful opportunities to work with great customers and lead businesses and lead technology development programs. I always had a passion around the global nature of businesses and around making a difference. And so after I had been an executive for some period of time, our CEO at the time had a vision that I didn't know about, and I don't know how many other people knew about, but he really was recognizing what was going on in the sustainability and ESG space and identifying that this was going to be important for the future. And he was asking me some odd questions, I'll tell you that, where I didn't know what my next job would be. I was one of the top leaders for research and development in the company, and I was really open to possibilities. But the good news, and this is advice I'd give to anyone who's going after their careers, be really honest and open about what your interests are, because people will help you. And what I didn't know is that, he was looking for how could 3M lean more into this space. And he was looking for someone to lead that effort, even though we had never had a career path in this space. And so I think I said the right things without knowing that I was saying the right things, because they were truly authentic to who I was. I did share the story with him about my parents, how that came up. And he brought forward to me this job offer, which sounded a little weird. I mean, it sounded odd to be, at the time, it was a vice president of sustainability for the company, and to really set the strategy on how 3M would advance our efforts in the sustainability space. And I asked a couple, maybe I shouldn't have, but I paused a moment and asked him if I could talk with a couple people first. In hindsight, that was kind of unusual to do that for the CEO. But I talked with a couple senior leaders who had been mentors of mine for a long time, and they said, "Go for it, trust it." And I will tell you that the roles in sustainability have been the favorites of my career. But even beyond that, my other favorite jobs in my career have all been things I didn't really see coming. It wasn't, I always strive to do the best I can in whatever job I have, and then to be open to possibilities. And I think that's how I landed here. And, even after a previous stint in the sustainability role, once I tried some other things, I realized how much I was really tied to it. So I had the opportunity to come back and serve as our chief sustainability officer. And we're reinventing as we go. The whole space continues to be exciting and dynamic and very challenging. So it really keeps you engaged, and that purpose piece of it is really exciting as well.
Really exciting. And I hear it in your voice. These are kind of rules or lessons for life. Sometimes you might be in a job interview and you don't know you're in a job interview. That's a lesson for life. And I think another lesson for life that's coming through is, if you're passionate about what you're doing, you're going to do it well. If you don't care about it, you're probably not going to do it as well. And then the honesty piece, I think, is super important. You're going to be best at kind of being who you are and at being clear about what you really think. And I'll bet that CEO, I don't know that CEO, but I'll bet that CEO knew that you were answering him honestly. And he didn't want somebody to be making up answers to please him. He wants to know that you're telling him what you truly think. So good lessons for life. So I'm going to switch a little bit because a lot of companies are kind of going through this process now. And there are more companies that are growing their sustainability practices. They're hiring chief sustainability officers. They're making decisions about their businesses, their supply chains, their energy sourcing in the direction of sustainability. They're thinking, how can we approach our challenges in a way that's sustainable? So what does this sustainability quest mean for GM, or I should say ESG and sustainability quest? What does it mean to GM? What's your approach to sustainability, and how does innovation and how does science, which you are so well known for, play a role in your approach to ESG?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's quite nuanced how we approach things. So at 3M, you may know us for Post-it notes or Scotch tape or Scotch-Brite scouring solutions, but you may not be aware of the diversity of our businesses. So I'll just start there a little bit to help with the context. So we have supplied to the auto industry products ranging from abrasives to masking tape since the auto industry started. Similarly, we've supplied into the electronics industry since the electronics industry started. We have a significant presence in healthcare. We are a broad provider of different types of solutions in the industrial spaces, and we do quite a bit with overall cleaning and maintenance solutions for retail and for hospitality industries as well. So really a very, very broad based, but it's very technologically based as well. So when I was asked to come in this chief sustainability role, this is now the next CEO. And so working with our current CEO, Mike Roman, when he came into the role, he asked me to step into this and he wanted to reframe 3M's strategy around sustainability. We knew that 3M's been at this for a long time. Back in 1975, we set up a program called Pollution Prevention Pays and really brought that into who we were and how we made decisions. We've been publishing sustainability reports since 1990 in one fashion or another, setting public goals and demonstrating progress. But when we really wanted to do something going forward that was truly authentic to 3M and took us to this next level. And so he gave us a very short amount of time to do it. People have told me it normally takes 2 years to reset a sustainability strategy, and he gave me 7 months. So we got a team together, and each of the members of our corporate operating committee, I had them designate one person that was a full-on lieutenant who could participate in the process, work with data that we had from employee surveys, from external surveys, from interviews with our people and externally, materiality studies, and then just the overall knowledge and experience that those individuals had across the enterprise. I refer to them as my dream team, and they were fantastic. And what we did, it was a very candid set of conversations to set up what kind of structure should we have? How should our framework be? Because we wanted it to be relevant for every part of the world, every part of our business. And so and the more we went through it, understanding what others thought about us, what these individual leaders thought from all different perspectives, we realized that science was really where we could make the unique difference. Where 3M's expertise with 10,000 plus scientists working in all different areas with that core technology platform across the company, science was really an important piece where we could help. And we had an ambition around 3M applying science to improve lives around the world. And then we decided that we need a little bit more structure than that to help our teams focus. And so we developed three pillars of our strategic framework. There's only three because that's easier to remember, and they're they're all starting with the letter C because that was going to help a lot, or didn't have to be C, but something with alliteration. And we put them in alphabetical order. So they're about science for circular, helping do more with less material and really driving a global circular economy. Science for climate, which is about creating new solutions and partnering with others to address global climate challenges. And then science for community, where we built on both the products that we offer for healthcare and safety solutions, as well as how we help engage the next generation in STEM technologies, and STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, to really make a difference and to engage the communities in an analytical way to make a difference in the world. And I believe that science is really the important way to make the most positive difference in the most positive way around the world. We don't want to go back. I don't think there are many people in the world who want to go back to where we were in an agrarian society hundreds of years ago. We want to move forward. We want to be sustainable in new ways based on the technologies and the scientific solutions that can happen today. And we need people to help solve those things. That was a long answer, wasn't it?
No, but I'm going to unpack it a little bit. Because you had this really varied, diverse set of challenges, because you're serving so many different industries, and you're a big company doing a lot of different things. And you had 7 months to come up with unifying principles that would lead to kind of sensible work streams. This is what I'm hearing. 7 months for a task that usually would take a lot longer. And you wanted to boil it down to something that everybody could remember, and that would, as people were working through whatever challenge they were working through, they would remember these 3 pieces: science for circular, science for climate, science for community. And they would start thinking through, well, am I doing what our aspirations are? Is what I'm doing connecting to our aspirations? That's what I'm hearing. Am I taking the right lessons from this?
Absolutely. And it wasn't easy. When we were starting this was in 2018. And some of those words, I would say climate was a word that based in the United States, that was a word that was kind of sensitive to come forward. When I started doing the pre-sell on this, I was looking for reactions to that word. And I was delighted, I continue to be delighted that people were in. It wasn't a problem. The word that surprised me, and community, not a problem working on community. Everyone felt good about that. The word that surprised me was circular. In particular, I went into one of the groups I tested it with is our group of corporate scientists. So these are the most senior scientists. They're people who have invented things like Post-it notes or command strips, or really reinvented manufacturing processes, just super smart sage individuals who have made big impacts on the company, have lots of confidence, and are super smart and not afraid of telling you what they think. So I brought this framework into them as a test before we went external. They were the group I was candidly the most afraid to put it in front of. And they were fine with climate. They loved community, no problem. But they thought circular was kind of a funny word. This is back in 2018. And they said, circular, it sounds like a circular argument. It sounds like you're running in circles. Let's not go with that. Let's develop a different term. And then, so it gives you an idea of how common that word was at that time. And what happened was I let them kind of argue amongst themselves a little bit. It was over a big lunchtime conversation. And they ended up, Google searching things and figuring out who was saying what are they saying? And they ended up convincing themselves that circular was actually the right word to use. That was the word that was emerging externally. That was the word that the external world was using, and 3M should adopt that word. But it was really funny then, because it was a little while before I started to see those individuals and others around the company using this word circular just as a normal way of speaking. And now I'm delighted within our technical forum. It's a kind of it's a 10,000 plus member group of our employees who have a technical background of some sort, and they meet on various different topics. They have different chapters, and now we have a chapter on climate and we have a chapter on circular. So, we've come a long way in the last 4 years.
In the ASEAN context, it's actually a very popular word. The Bruneians they made circular economy central to their agenda for ASEAN. Thailand, that's now chairing APEC, they talk about circular economy. I imagine in the G20 context, and Indonesia is chairing the G20, there's going to be a lot of discussion of circular economy. So you're talking with us. You're using the right word. You're using a word that has really great resonance in this region. But let's talk for a moment about what this led you to, because my understanding is that you set a really high bar when you introduce new products, and I want everyone to understand what that is. You have what, 55,000 products. It's a lot of products to keep track of, but every new product, as I understand, has a sustainability value commitment. Can you talk a little bit about what this is, how it came to be, why 3M approaches its products in this way? And I imagine this also came out from, this emerged from some of these intense discussions you had over 7 months.
Yeah, it's, I believe that the sustainability value commitments, or we call them SVCs sometimes internally because it's kind of a mouthful. But our SVCs, sustainability value commitments for new products, came out through discussions with our chief technology officer, John Banovitz, who leads R&D and actually now environmental stewardship for the entire company. And it began with a bit of an offhanded comment he made when he was addressing a group of our product stewards across the company. And he talked about in that session, and this was about just a little before we were rolling out, we had conceptualized the 3 pillars, but we hadn't rolled them out publicly yet. And he made the comment to this group, this was their annual big meeting, and he was talking about how important their roles were to ensure that every product that we're producing is safe in the environment, and we're looking out for regulations. And he said, and in fact, every product should have some sort of sustainability way where they're advancing a greater good. There should be a purpose around every product beyond just making money. And I caught him afterwards. And I said, I loved that comment. Can we make that an official rule? And he's like, well, I don't see why not. I hope he doesn't mind me paraphrasing him here. He goes, well, I don't see why not. It makes so much sense. And in fact, in so many ways, we're already doing it. And in fact, there was an interview after we launched it where he started to say that, in fact, we've been doing this all along. It's not that big a deal. And I was kicking him under the table. It's like, you're right. There are many aspects where we have been doing this all along. But the fact is, we had not made it a requirement in the earliest stages of new products and across every new product. And so what that meant is that by making it official, and we actually announced it at COP24 in Poland. So it was a big deal. We had the stage, we had a lot of interest from that. And I personally believe that's perhaps the biggest thing that we are doing, is that requirement that every new product have a sustainability value commitment starting in the earliest stages. Because I've gotten letters from employees saying, I was kind of cautious about bringing up this idea of something that was beyond what the customer asked for, something that I felt passionate about, that I knew could make a difference. But I wasn't quite sure that person, sitting in the other team member, maybe from a more conservative background or a more conservative organization, might be, how would they feel about me bringing up, well, let's use recycled content, or what if we plan for the end of life in a different way? Sometimes those sustainability requirements cost a little bit more money. And, how is the person getting measured on the cost of goods sold going to react to that? So we've gotten some really great letters about teams coming forward and doing that. We've also consciously instilled a bit of a competition about it. So it isn't a matter of just checking the boxes of which criteria do you meet, but it's more about how can you create the biggest impact. And by the way, when you're in the idea phase, before you get into feasibility and development, you probably want to have more than one idea of what you can do for a sustainability value commitment, because some of them, hey, it's science, it's research, you learn new things. They can't all happen. And so you want to hedge your bets early on. So it's been a beautiful thing, actually. We're very much on a journey with it. We can always be better. But I've been really excited to see how everyone participates in those conversations early on. And some of those folks who normally might have held their ideas back are bringing them in. They're bringing them forward, and they're seeing groups that are changing their businesses, are really reinventing with those sustainability ideas in mind, and they're growing the business at the same time. So it's very exciting. You can tell I'm kind of passionate about that one.
I can see that it's within the company, it's competitive. This is a company that's been around for a long time, and it's a fairly new idea. But you built a culture in which internally people think, how can I up my game? How can I meet those SVCs, the sustainability value commitments, better? What can I do that will make my product not just make money, but make the world a little bit better? What if all 175 of our US-ABC member companies were to adopt an approach like that? They might not call it SVCs, but I was just letting myself kind of run with this earlier in the morning and thinking, what if huge companies, that multinational companies based in the United States, started doing this on a regular basis? What an impact that would have.
I love it. I love it. One of I have 3 words that I think about, and I had these in my mind as I was at COP 26 in November, is, really the core of what we need to do is, I believe, about science, it's about collaboration, and it's about a sense of urgency. And so that collaboration piece, once you start having all of the companies have that as a requirement, then you can start doing things at whole new levels. Yes, it's scope 1, 2, and 3 carbon emissions, but that circular economy that we were talking about earlier, and how relevant that is to ASEAN. And so maybe ASEAN companies get to participate in a specific way on this. True circular economy, we do a lot within our company with taking a byproduct from one manufacturing process and put it into another. But where you really get the build out is when you do it between companies. And that's when it really makes a difference. So, we used recycled content. Maybe something used to be a plastic bottle before, and now it's something that goes into a Scotch-Brite sponge. But there's really more ways that we can do that when we're looking at reinventing the recycling process. For example, there's some advanced recycling, no longer mechanical, but now a chemical recycling process. And there's some great work going on in the ASEAN region on this as well, where we can pull that in, and you don't have the same issues of the required downcycling of the plastic when you do it through this advanced process. You can really have the highest performing plastics again have a new life. There's so many examples, but when you can cross businesses and cross geographies with that really opens things up on what can happen from a circular economy perspective to really reduce our material footprint around the world.
Well, let's dig into this collaboration and partnerships a little bit, because earlier you mentioned you work with the auto industry, with abrasives, electronics industry, healthcare, industrial cleaning and maintenance solutions. You're providing technology-based solutions to all of those industries, and probably ones that I didn't list. So in your partnerships, do you kind of lay it out in advance? Do you work with your partners to say, this is our aspiration? Or is it kind of a hard and fast rule? How do you approach it with your various partners so that they buy in, that they say, okay, we want to be doing this with you in this way?
Yeah, I would say it depends. There are customers, and we talked about the electronics in the auto industry, for example. When I first got into the sustainability space and was figuring out what it meant on my own purposes, I realized that, having spent time in those industries, I realized that they were into sustainability and had been for a long time as a core part of what they were doing without ever calling it sustainability. So if you were talking about getting more miles per gallon or kilometers per gallon out of your vehicle, that was fundamentally a sustainability question. If you were talking about having your electronic device have a longer battery life, or fit more devices in, have more functionality in a smaller space, that was about sustainability as well. I remember one of my earliest conversations once I first came into the sustainability space, with a business leader who was leading our automotive industry at the time, Makoto Ishii, fabulous leader. He said, he said, well, sustainability isn't important to us. And I said, really? He goes, our customers never ask for sustainability. I said, but do they ask for being energy efficient? Do they ask for safety in your products? Do they ask for, reducing waste, things like that? And he goes, well, that's all they ask for. Probably a couple other things, but he basically said, our entire business is about sustainability. If that's what it is, it's all about sustainability. So, we've been at it for a long time. And sometimes you're having those conversations, getting back to your question, sometimes you're having those conversations without realizing you're having those conversations. It's kind of like the interview idea. It's like, you didn't realize you were talking about sustainability, but you were. Other times customers will come to us and say, we want, I'm talking about a very large global company. We want our footprint to be made from 100% renewable electricity. So whenever you're using electricity to make our product, well, in fact, I can say who this is. This is Apple. Apple says that when you're making our product, we want it to be made from 100% renewable electricity. And we've signed on for that. It's because we were doing things on our own separately, but we could do that, and that company, as well as others, are also very, very interested in recycled content in what they're doing, or energy efficiency, or other areas of sustainability. And companies like that will tell you directly, that's what I want. Some other companies may have issues with, I'm not going to call it issues. They may have something that we sometimes have, where different people across the company talk about things in different language, literally and figuratively. So what happens is there's an official position around sustainability that comes out in a sustainability report or some general report that addresses sustainability topics. And then there's the business discussions. And we found in many cases, we would have the conversations with our business, the procurement folks from our customers. And then it would be a little bit separate from the sustainability report. So one of the early pieces of advice I give to our teams when they say they want to work with their customers more around sustainability, but the customers aren't using that word, I recommend to them, virtually all companies these days have some sort of sustainability report. I recommend to them to go to that sustainability report before they go to the customer or before their conversation with the customer. And what they'll see is in that report, they'll learn a lot about the ambitions of the company. They'll learn about what they've done so far that's impressive to remind them, and they'll learn what language they use. And in doing so, that can really make those discussions about roadmaps for products, technologies, values, what they value. Yes, we're all in business, and financials are always a really important piece of that. But increasingly, people are recognizing around the world that these ESG factors, if they're not financial today, they will be in the future. And so companies really need to be planning for that. And like I said, virtually every company has a sustainability report. So if you look in there and you find out what those pieces are that they're driving, if you bring them up back to your customer in different ways, it may ring a bell for them to help them realize, wait a second, this is another issue I need to be paying attention to. Something my leaders have been talking about, something that's maybe emerging as an increasing metric for us. So we found ways that we sometimes bring it up in those contexts as well. And also working with suppliers. We set expectations for our suppliers with a code of conduct, including sustainability pieces. We reach out to our highest volume suppliers, ask for their help with this, and we provide an award and recognition system for suppliers doing great things in this space as well.
So I want to go over a couple of pieces of that answer because I feel like there are, again, many lessons. One is maybe the first word that is being used isn't sustainability, but if you're willing to expand your definition and really learn from your partner what she or he is thinking about in terms of what we would call ESG goals or sustainability, then you may be able to find a solution, but it's going to require an iterative process and some listening on your point, and then maybe a little bit of on your part, and then maybe a little bit of reframing. That leads to potentially a virtuous cycle where, we have a client like Apple who's, said we want everything to be sourced on renewable energy. Well, that kind of forces the other companies to do the same, because if Apple makes an announcement, we're going to meet a really high standard for sustainability. Well, guess what? Intel, Google, Facebook, they're going to all want to do the same thing. And I came from Google. And that was certainly the dynamic I saw, a virtuous cycle. And then one of the points that you made, I think, is really critical. If these factors aren't seen as financial immediately, as having a financial impact immediately, they will in the long run. And you ignore those warning signs at your peril. So these are all super useful lessons. Let me pursue just one bit further, because you've also, in addition to partnering with your clients, you've partnered with NGOs. I know you've worked with Clean Air Asia to help city governments in Metro Manila, in the Philippines, in Delhi, in India to fight air pollution. You've been working with NGOs to accelerate green developments. Are there reasons that you've chosen to partner with these and other NGOs?
Yeah, we have we work really closely with our philanthropic group, and it's a combination of financial giving that it's been part of our value system for some time. We've set our philanthropy to look through those 3 pillars that we talked about, whether it's science for circular, science for climate, or science for communities. And we pay attention to what's relevant for our business and how we can create an impact. In addition to the direct financials, we also have programs where we have pro bono work. And yes, through our legal organization, we do pro bono work that we think about, again, along different venues, different types of work in these 3 pillars and others. But we also do it where there's a program that we call 3M Impact. I'm really proud of. It's been around for about 5 years now. And employees can self-nominate to be included in this program where they get, it's really a leadership development program in addition to a giving program for communities. But it is a program where we have typically thousands of applicants for less than 100 positions. And it's been paused a little bit due to COVID for obvious reasons, but these groups will have, they tend to be on the order of a handful of individuals in different regions, or set intentionally for the appropriate diversity of backgrounds and both geographically and professionally, in order to make a difference in partnership with NGOs in different regions around the world. So we've done a number of these in the ASEAN region, also Latin America, Africa in particular, where there's real needs, where our teams can come in and help make a difference for an NGO locally. And they range from, there was a water program in India, there was a program with helping with childcare, and in one of the ASEAN countries, I don't want to quote the wrong one, there have been design projects to help small businesses also in the ASEAN region, and really give back programs. And what's exciting about it is the whole process goes on for a period of months, where the employees start with learning about what the program is, the individual NGO, what their challenges are, and then start to figure out, okay, I'm chosen for this project because maybe I'm a designer, or maybe because I have a really innovative finance background, or because I have a certain technical background. And then they work with the NGO from afar, and then they actually spend 2 weeks on the ground doing live development action programs, and then some follow-up afterwards. And it's been the kind of program that changes people's lives. And they tell you that they'll tell you, that it just, in order to apply for the program, they already had an interest in the space and some passion around the purpose of it. But they learn so much in the process and think about things in different ways. And so that's been a really interesting and exciting combination of giving to communities, partnering with NGOs to help them advance what they do, and to develop our own employees to think bigger and think in different ways. So that's just one example.
Well, those are inspiring. But we also learn from when it doesn't work. Or if you were talking to another CSO and you wanted to say, okay, we had umpteen successes in this area, but here's one thing that didn't work that we learned a lot from that might be useful to you. Are there any lessons that you can think of something that you would urge people to steer away from?
Yeah, and are you thinking specifically in the NGO space?
I was thinking of the NGO space. Like,
Yeah.
is there any kind of, this will save you a lot of heartache if you avoid this?
Yeah, I think that it's important that you're engaged. Um, you know, and I think most of the NGOs that I've talked with say that too. It's one thing to cut a check and give money, but there's really a lot more that you can, typically, and I would say for sure with 3M, but typically with most companies, there's expertise that are well beyond the financial donations. So while NGOs are happy to have the money, very often you can make a bigger impact by staying engaged in any number of ways. Sometimes we'll have someone be on the board for the NGO, or sometimes like the programs we talked about with 3M Impact, where we actually have projects where we have individuals on the ground with the NGOs. But if it's important enough, I guess another piece is make sure it's strategically aligned with what you care about, because then you're more likely to have your groups go in and have the passion, and especially if it has an alignment with a business interest, either understanding what the need is or actually providing solutions to it. Those are things that make sense. So, and then you can have that that 1 + 1 is more than 2 kind of multiplier effect. So it's not just about giving money. It's about staying close enough to know what's going on, to offer guidance, to be able to help steer and help learn from what's happening. So we'll go back to the example of Clean Air Asia. It's a really exciting group. I love the way they come in a very grassroots way, understanding what's happening in the community. It's a lot of different reasons all around the world that air quality can be not great, but is this a situation where it's the fundamental regulations that are causing vehicle air pollution? And if so, is it one segment of the vehicles that is causing the problem? Is it coal-fired power plants? Is it burning fields and causing pollution that way? There's many, many ways that can cause air pollution. And when you understand, and with those kind of 3 very different examples, what the root cause is, then you can make a difference. Is it about partnering with governments to help change a regulation? Is it about helping to educate people to understand what the issue is and maybe change the behavior? Or is it about protecting people? And some of that gets into our business. We have room air purifier solutions, air filters. The big business I forgot to mention when I talked about our business is our safety business. It's been so obvious in the time of COVID that that respirators and personal protective equipment are so important.
And we've all worn your products.
Yeah, can't believe we forgot that one. Anyway, I forgot it. But that's part of the reason that it makes sense for us to partner with someone like Clean Air Asia is to understand what the thoughts are, and then to help provide solutions, help guide based on things we've learned in other spaces, and help guide our development of what can we offer that might be a product to help solve these challenges or change in our own operations. So it's I think when we look at NGO partners, there are so many great NGOs to partner with. When you're thinking about it for your company, I think you'll create a much bigger impact for the NGO and for the community, and you'll get a better benefit for your company in terms of the people being engaged if you pick things that are relevant to you. So that would be maybe my advice. It's not that there's bad NGOs, but sometimes there's stronger matches than others.
Well, that really resonates. And I'm thinking of it in terms of successes, but for Google, it was a project with the Asia Foundation on digital upskilling. And we were aligned in terms of our mission, aligned in terms of what the Asia Foundation wanted to accomplish, and the employees were deeply engaged, probably still are. You also, earlier you mentioned COP26, and I think maybe you went to Glasgow. I wonder if you would share what were kind of some of your key takeaways. Did you leave with a sense of optimism? Did you leave with a sense of a whole lot more needs to be done? And what do you expect to see going forward? And what will 3M focus on when it comes to the COP process?
Well, you've probably figured out I'm a pretty optimistic person. So yes. I did lead with a sense of optimism while also leading with a sense that there's a tremendous amount to be done.
Yeah.
The biggest aha for me was that, so this was my 3rd COP. I've been watching them from afar for a long time, but this was the 3rd time 3M had a big presence and the 3rd time I had attended. And it was, for me, it was very exciting to see that the conversations had changed a bit. Yes, there were all different perspectives, but the actual conversations that were happening were much more about how are we going to do this? It wasn't about arguing about whether emissions and climate change are real things or whether humans had an aspect of it. I feel like we're past that. Now, maybe some people still have different perspectives, but we're past it. We're about how can we address this challenge that we face collectively? And to me, that's really exciting because that's when the rubber meets the road, if you will, to start making progress, to start those collaborations, to start, what are the scientific pieces? I'll tell you, one of my favorite, there's all these pavilions, booths that you can go to in different countries and different nonprofits and different subjects going on. One of my favorites was the science booth. It was really cool. Now, we've already established I'm a geek, physicist first, then a material scientist, but it was really exciting to have a place that was really convening people to talk about the science. And, it was ranging from, the core science around climate change to things about, electric vehicles or things about air quality or things about, underrepresented groups being represented in science. And it was very exciting to me to see those things happening, participate in discussions. There were, despite COVID, there were more CEOs in attendance than ever before at a COP. The United States was participating, which was a new thing from the last 4 years. And the conversations were just a lot more rich. I think a lot more focused on how do we do things together? How do we make a difference rather than disputing, whether something was real or what country was going to step forward. It was more about if the country couldn't, and I know like different countries in the ASEAN region are in different places on this, as well as different countries around the world. But if one country can step forward in making this bold goal, and I'm not in that country, it's about how did you do that? How much do you know about how you do? What can I learn to help our country be able to do something similar? And the same thing for companies. Really exciting times for that.
We earlier discussed with, and maybe some of the people who are on this call were part of the discussion. We talked with Deloitte about how some of the actions that can be taken in Asia will have global significance. That this is an area where you can take a step and the ripple effects will be felt very far and wide, not only in a part of the world with almost a trillion, almost a billion people, well over 600 million people in ASEAN, but then the rest of Asia and then the rest of the world. So we're talking about potential impacts beyond specific countries where actions are taken. But let's talk about some of the specific countries. You have one of the largest solar operations in the region. Last year, you won a prestigious sustainability award, the AmChams of Asia Pacific Award in Sustainability. It was for your work in the Asia Pacific. It seems in this area of sustainability, you're trying to set some high standards in Asia too. Can you tell us a little bit about your specific work in Asia on sustainability?
Yeah, and we do think about it from a global perspective. 3M has been in Asia and the ASEAN region for decades and decades now. I think setting up in the late 1950s, some of the first operations, ranging from Japan to China. Singapore is a significant hub for us, as you point out. We are delighted to have been one of the first companies to invest big in solar in Singapore. We have large rooftops there for our manufacturing facilities, and we're able to put solar there to really help with the electricity generation from a renewable perspective. When we think about sustainability at the enterprise level, we are ambitious with our goals, and we are committed. And then we break it down to what it means from a local level. So, for example, since 2002, 3M has already reduced our global carbon emissions on an absolute basis more than 70%. This is one of my first talks of 2022. I was going to say earlier this year, it's last year, almost at this time, we committed to further advancing that. So we've committed to carbon neutrality in our operations by 2050, and with a milestone of an additional 50% reduction on top of the 70% we've already done, an additional 50% reduction by 2030 and 80% reduction by 2040 to get to that 2050 milestone. We've also committed to advancing our water efficiency. So the water that 3M uses is typically borrowed water, if you will, or non-consumptive use of water, but we use water for various types of cooling processes and in manufacturing, and we're striving to use less. So we have commitments around reducing our water use 20% and improving the quality of that water as it's coming out of our facility. Let's make sure it's cleaner than when it came in. So these are bold global goals. What we do, because we're really so focused on being a science company on this, and we have strong governance, both with our senior leaders and with our board about this area, they were really took a strong position with us that if we were going to make goals like this, and they wanted us to make goals like this, we needed to have what they call the math that goes with the path. And so we needed to understand what those projects were that would get us there. And so that's one of the reasons we didn't come up with some of these goals earlier, because man, everybody, well, we were very clear that these were great goals to have. We just weren't as clear as we wanted to be about how we were going to get there. And so what we did is we mapped out our whole global footprint for particularly carbon, water, and then we made another goal around plastics in Earth Day in April. But around carbon and water, we mapped out, where are those biggest footprint pieces, and what does it mean? What do we need to do to impact those, to cut them in half by 2030, 80% by 2040, and get to neutrality by 2050. Our commitment was that we needed to have more than 70% or 80%, depending of our knowledge about how to get there. So for the near term, that 2030 plan, we've got more than 80% of that laid out. In fact, we have all of the 2030 plan laid out. But there's risk in it. We made sure that we understood what technologies would be required, what the costs would be required, and how we would go about doing that. And it kind of happens in two different ways. We take those bigger pieces, like on the Pareto chart, those bigger chunks, certain manufacturing processes, certain products, certain technologies. And then, we focus on those at the enterprise level. Then we have things like our sustainability value commitments and other internal metrics where we expect everyone to raise their performance. And so what happens is as you make this business that's at the top of the Pareto more and more energy efficient, or reducing the water use, going closed loop, things like that, then suddenly these other ones that were smaller start popping up. And if they've been doing their own work all along the way with sustainability value commitments and other internal focused areas, then they can keep sliding down to the lowest parts of the Pareto, so that when we, so that we can get closer and closer from both that top down and bottom up type of effort. So going to Asia, that's a big piece. So renewable energy is something we've leaned into early on. It fits our culture with science. It fits our headquarters in Minnesota. We have a great opportunity to partner with Xcel Energy, our local utility. But we've had great work partnering in places like Brazil and countries in Europe. Asia and the ASEAN region in general is a bit behind where other parts of the world are from a renewable energy perspective. So the great news is that means that there's an opportunity to jump onto the latest technology. The price curve has come down considerably, so it's more doable. There's a lot of things that, from my understanding of the ASEAN region, there should be good access to solar energy from the sun, and lots of opportunity for wind as well. So there's good opportunity there. And that was something where we wanted to lean in with our facility in Singapore. It was ahead of the curve, and we're proud of that. There's other geographies, where we take different approaches. As mentioned, the one in Singapore is on site on our own facilities. I mentioned in Minnesota, we partner with our local utility to help them establish and rebuild the grid for the communities. It's a really good way for them and for our communities to help convert to more and more renewable energy. If we, for example, guarantee that we will work with them for X number of years or decades on the energy sourcing, then that gives them the confidence to build in. And there's many different models, PPAs and others that power purchase agreements and others that we've used around the world to try to advance the renewable energy footprint. And we're making really good progress. We're pretty excited about that goal and the progress we've made.
And I love the math that goes with the path. I think it comes from, a culture where people aren't going to say, okay, well, we'll have these kind of general goals. It's a culture where, okay, specifically, how are we going to nail this down? And what are the practical steps we're going to take? I think that actually is a culture that's very consistent with what we see in a whole lot of the ASEAN region. So, but I also love the ambitious, kind of breathtakingly ambitious nature of your goals, because what if every company were to do this? What if every one of our 175 companies and many, many companies beyond were to do this? We'd be looking at an entirely different situation from what we'd be leaving for our children and grandchildren. I want to make sure that if anybody has a question they want to jump in with, that they can do that. So keeping an eye on the chat box, or whatever it's called, the chat space. So anybody who wants to jump in with a question, please do. But I'm going to throw out one more. Where are we heading? Where are we heading on a global basis when it comes to sustainability and ESG? What should other CSOs, what other people who share your passion, be on the lookout for in Asia and beyond?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go back to the answer that I took to COP, because this is going to be the question, right? At the highest level, it's about advancing the science. We pretty much know what needs to be done. It's a matter of how do we make it happen. And bigger pieces of that as well are the collaboration. There's no company, you mentioned the 175 companies in ASEAN. No company does this alone. We're so intertwined, whether it's our climate challenges or the circular economy, or looking after our communities. These are things that inherently must be done together. So science, collaboration, and acting with urgency. To me, those are the big things that I would give as advice. And I do think the momentum is building. Is it building everywhere equally? Is it building as fast as we really want it to? No, it's not. And so I think you look out for those pockets where you can really make a difference, pay attention to the latest science and technology, collaborate with others, and move from where we are now. There's a leader, Margaret Mead, has a quotation about, never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can make a difference, or change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. And I believe that. I believe that if you come together with like-minded individuals, doesn't need to be a big group, and it doesn't need to be everybody, but that's the way you start building. That's the way you start changing the world. And I think we have great opportunities to do that, starting right now with what we have right now.
And those three things, the three principles you laid out: science, it's got to be based on sound science; collaboration, none of us are doing this alone, and we must act with urgency. Those all apply in the ASEAN region. You said that Asia is somewhat behind in this area. That means there are opportunities to surge. There are opportunities to jump ahead, to use new technologies, to move faster in the direction of sustainability. And it's in Asia where the rubber meets the road, where we have to make sure that the math goes with the path, that we can move forward in a practical, pragmatic way. Companies will make money doing that. It's not like it has to be just about sacrifice. These are opportunities. These are huge opportunities to make a difference. So this discussion has been, I think we run over already. This discussion has been incredibly inspiring. I hope that everybody who listened just now and those who listen to the recording will take inspiration from your words, and actually more than from your words, from what you've been doing and what your company has been doing to make sure that we have practical answers to the problems that our globe faces. So thanks for setting a high bar and for holding 3M to such high standards, because that sets the bar for others too.
Well, thank you very much for having me, but thank you for the work that you're all doing. I see tremendous opportunity in the ASEAN region, and we need it. So I really appreciate the work that you and the sustainability team at the ASEAN organization are doing, and all of the 175 companies. We look forward to continued collaboration.
Well, we do too. Thanks so much. This was fun. I share your optimism. We can do this, but we have to do it together. So thank you.